Hello guys, and welcome to a new tutorial series. This time we will be covering how to create a trivia game for mobile. The game is fairly simple. We have a title screen, a wheel to select the category, timed questions with a few power-ups, and a results screen. If you want to see all of the upcoming videos on this series, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and if you have any questions, come join us on Discord, link below in the description. Let's first create the screen for our question. Let's go to Game Object, UI, Canvas. We're going to be changing the canvas scaler to scale with screen size. And we're going to do 1080 by 1920. I will just put expand. Okay, so let's just create a new empty child. Let's call this question. We're going to add background. So let's add an image component here. Let's select from our art folder the background. Okay. We're gonna 9 slice this so we can stretch it a little bit. So let's go to sprite editor. We can just drag from the green arrows here. This will stretch nicely when we scale it up. Okay. Now if we stretch this for the whole width, the parent, and we make this, let's say 800 by 500. This is the sprite if it's scaled without the slicing. So we should go to background and change this to sliced. Yeah, now it looks perfect. We're just gonna move this up a little bit. Okay, let's go to UI, text. If it's the first time you're using TMP, you have to import the essentials. So let's do that. Let's put the new text object as a child of the question. Make sure it's stretched out all the way. Okay, we're going to be changing the font. So let's just change the font. Make it black so we can see it. Make it a little bit bigger. And let's just make sure it's centered. So we'll center it here and here. So this will be our question text for this particular question. Now that doesn't make a lot of sense, but what I wanted to do is put something really long so we can see that this doesn't look really nice because it gets all the way up to the edge. So the easiest way to do here is just go to extra settings. Let's add some padding. So let's do, I don't know, 15 on the left and 15 on the right. Okay, that looks much better. And also let's just rename this to question text, actually question label. Now that we have the question, let's start creating the answers. Let's just add a new child. Let's call this answers. We're going to create a new one, so answer. So the answer is going to have a text that is going to display the options. So let's go to Text Mesh Pro again. So answer label. Call this answer number 1. If you're always going to be using the same font, it's really tedious to start changing it every time you create a new label. So an easy tip here is to just go to Text Mesh Pro, Resources, TMP Settings, and here you have the default font asset. So we're gonna just drag and drop the one we want here. So now if we go back to our game, let's just delete that. We create a new Text Mesh Pro. We can see that it already starts with the font that we want. Let's just go answer label. We're gonna have this in white. Let's just do 45. Let's put answer number 1. For the sizing, we want it to stretch to the parent as well. And now we want the parent to be 800 by 100, that's okay. I will just center it again, both vertically and horizontally. We also want to add 2 images to this answer element. So let's go to UI image. This is going to be correct. What we want to do here is to be able to show the green background when the answer is correct. So let's go to set native size. Make sure it's centered. As you may have known, if you want to change the rendering order, you have to change the priorities in the hierarchy. So if we bring this back, okay, that looks good. Then we'll just duplicate this, call this incorrect. I will just assign the purple one. Let's just disable both of these for now. What we're going to do is just create a prefabs. So let's go to folder, prefabs. And we're going to drag and drop our answer here. Okay. We can just actually now duplicate it 4 times. We're going to do something like this. If you want this to be spaced out evenly, you can go here, just add a vertical layout group. Make sure it's in middle center. Just disable all of this and add some spacing. So yeah, that looks pretty good. Bring this down a little bit. Now that we have our question screen set up, let's start thinking about how we're going to model the information for our game. Let's go to scripts. We're going to create a new folder. Let's call this models. So the models are going to just contain data. They won't have any kind of behavior. Let's just create a new C# script. Let's call this question model. Open it up. Like I mentioned before, all of the models are just going to be data containers, so they don't need to extend from model behaviors. So let's just get rid of this and this as well. Actually, just leave the public class. What we do want is this to be serializable. So just go to system.serializable. And for our questions, we're going to need a public string question, what the actual question is. The strings for all 4 answers. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we're going to have a last public int correct answer index. So if this is 1, this will be the correct answer. If this is 2, this will be 3 and 4 and so on. Our game is also divided in categories, so I'm just going to create a new script for that. Same as before, this is a model, so we don't need any of this. Let's get rid of everything. We're going to make this serializable as well. So for this, we're just going to have a string for the name. So public string name. We're going to have a list, so public list of question models, so questions for this category. Make sure you put the usings for the collections generic. And lastly, to hold everything together, we're going to create one new model. So let's call this game model. And this is just going to be holding the list of all the categories that we have in the game. Go to public, list, category model, categories. Now for this model, we're going to be doing something different. We're going to extend a scriptable object. You'll see why in a minute. And here we're going to just add a create asset menu with menu name equals all this trivia create game model. Now, since this is a scriptable object and we created an asset menu, if we go back to Unity, we can click anyone in our project, go to create, and we can see a new entry for trivia, create game model. So let's just create that and we'll call this configuration. And if you look in the inspector, you can see that you have categories. So let's just put like 1. And here you will have the name. So let's call this television. And you have a list of questions. So here you can just put 2. And you can put any question that you can come up with here. How many friends are there in the TV show? You have an answer like 4, 5, 6, and 8. And the correct answer is 6, so the index is 3. This is a really simple way to get started to be able to create questions and categories for your game. Now that we have our questions ready, let's start figuring out how to actually tie it up together with the UI. The first thing I'm going to do is go to Assets, Import Package, Custom Package, and I'm going to import the Bigfoot Codes Utils package. You can find the link for this in the description. Basically has a object pool, singleton, and a panels manager. You can also see the video when I created this in the link below. Let's just import this. Okay, so first of all, we're gonna create a new game manager. So let's go to Scripts, Game Manager. So the game manager will have the reference to our configuration file and will also return, as for us, a question for a given category. So first, make sure this is a singleton. So let's go to Singleton, Game Manager. This is one of the classes that we had in our Bigfoot utils. So here we're gonna have a reference, so public game model configuration. So it's gonna be a reference to that game model that we just created. And let's just create a new simple function. Let's call public question model, get question for category name. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is to get the category from the configuration. So let's go to category model. So this equals, so from the configuration categories, we're going to be using link queue to search for that. So let's go first to our default. It says using link queue. Let's do that. So now we need to tell link queue what we're looking for. So we're looking for a category where that category dot name equals the category name that we passed as a parameter. Now this model will either return the category found, the category model, or it will be null. So we have to make sure that we check for null. So if category model not null, so it means we actually found the category. We're just going to return here, so category model dot questions at index 0. We're going to be changing this later on, but for now let's just always return the first question. And if we reach here, no category was found with that name, it will just return null. Now let's also create a questions manager. So let's go to here, questions manager. So this will be in charge of handling all of the questions screen. The question manager is also going to be a singleton. So question manager. And we're actually going to do on enable. We're just going to make sure that we have a reference to the game manager. So game manager. Okay. We'll just cache this. So game manager dot instance, since it's a singleton. Reference. Okay. And when we start, we'll just do that and just load next question. Let's just create that load next question. So inside here, we're just gonna get a new question. So bar new question equals game manager dot get question. We need a category name, so let's just put it here for now. So public string category name. Just pass this on here. Let's just make sure that it's not null. Now what we actually want to do is to be able to populate our UI with this question. Let's stop here for a second. Let's create one new class. We're just going to separate this by UI. We're going to call this question UI. This is going to be a really simple class. All we're going to do here is just have some references. So public text mesh pro question label, public text mesh. So let's create the answers. So answer 1 label. Okay, and we're going to have a simple method. So public void populate question is going to receive a question model. And we're just going to assign the values here. So question label dot text, question model dot question, and do the same for all 4 answers. If we now go back to the question manager, we're going to have a reference here. First, make sure that all public things are up. Okay, let's go public question UI question. We're going to do question.populate. We're just going to pass the new question. Sorry, new question. Okay, there we go. Back in Unity, we need to create a few things. So first, let's go to our question and assign our question UI. We're going to make sure the answers are a child of the question as well. And here we're just going to assign these references. So for the question text, we're going to do label, and here assign each the answers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect. Now let's also create a game object. Let's call this singletons. And under here, we're just going to create our game manager. Assign the game manager. And make sure you select the configuration file that you just created. Okay, perfect. And let's also create a new manager. Let's call this questions manager. Assign the question manager here. Make sure it has a reference to the UI. We can put here television. Okay. Let's see if this works now. If we press play, we see a small error. We have a null reference here. So the game manager is not being initialized before we get a new question. So this actually needs to be on start instead of on enable. Let's see now. And yeah, you can see all of our answers being shown here and the question properly populated here as well. Okay, great. Let's now add some behavior to our answers. So let's open the prefab. Okay. The first thing we're going to do is just create an answers UI. So it's just here, there, UI. The first thing we want the answer to do is to act as a button. So let's first go here, just create public void on answer clicked. Okay, let's just debug.log answer was clicked. Okay, and in Unity we want to go to the label. We're gonna add a button, remove all type of animation, we don't need any of that. And on click, we first want to go to the answer and add the answer UI there. And to the on click event, we're gonna drag and drop the answer here and select on answer clicked. If we press play and clicked on the answers, you can see that we get the callback that we needed. Perfect. We need to know if the answer that was clicked was the correct one or not. So to do that, let's just delete this. We're going to actually ask our question manager. So we're going to have a method here. We're going to go public bool answer question. We're going to pass an answer index. What we're going to do here is actually check if this index is the exact same index as the correct answer index. The first thing we need to do is just save this variable that we got here. So we're going to go private question model. Let's call this current question. We're going to be using this. So we have a saved variable somewhere. And here we can just return if the current question dot correct answer index equals the answer index. So now back in our answer UI, we actually need to do a public int answer index here. We're just going to do a questions manager instance answer question, and we're going to pass or index. One thing that we need to do before we try this out is go through all of the answers here and make sure that the index is set. So this will be the first one, 2, 3, 4. We're actually going to debug some information here as well. So this is going to be a bool result. Just debug. Now if we press on the incorrect answer, you can see it's false, false, true, false. Perfect. This is working great so far. The last thing we want to do here is to show the correct or incorrect image based on your answer. We want this to have some kind of animation. So first we're going to go to Window, Asset Store. We're going to search for Do Tween. And make sure you install the free version. Now that we have .tween installed, let's go to our answer UI. Let's add 2 references for our images. So public image, correct image. Okay, so let's first do this without the tweening. So what we're going to do here is if result, we're going to do correct image dot set active dot game object dot set active true, else. Okay, so this is very simple. If the result is correct, we're going to show the correct image, and if it's incorrect, we're going to show the incorrect image. If we open up the prefab and we assign the references, when we test this out, we can see incorrect, incorrect, correct, incorrect. But it looks kind of stiff. That's where .tween comes into play. Also, if it's the first time you're using it, you probably need to do some setup. So open here and just setup, wait for it to compile, and just apply the changes. Okay. So now what we're going to do here is open up the answer again. We're actually going to enable both of these. We're just going to fade them out. So just take the color, make sure the alpha is 0, so it's there, but you cannot see it. And now from the code, what we're going to do, if it's correct, we're actually going to fade this in. So let's do a do fade. As you can see, this uses the .tween library that we just implemented. But what this will do is it's going to fade to alpha 1 in the duration that we want, so in .5. So it will go from transparent to full opaque in 0.5 seconds. And if this is incorrect, we'll do the same thing. Let's see how this changes now. Looks much cleaner, much more polished. One last thing to polish this up is that we're going to go here. We're going to create 2 new images. This is going to be correct. We're actually going to drag and drop this here. Make this a little bit smaller so to make sure it preserves the aspect. To 1000. Okay, bring this up a little bit. Okay, we'll do the same with incorrect. Okay, perfect. Now we want both of these to be at 0 scale. We're actually going to do some little animation using .tween as well. My idea here is to show you all of the things you can do with tweening to try to polish up your game. If you open up the question manager, you can actually add those 2 references. So let's go to public transform correct image. Okay. We're just gonna take this, so we're gonna do bool is correct. So if this is correct, if it's correct, we're actually going to do a tween result. We're gonna pass in the correct image. If it's not, we're gonna do the twin result. We're gonna pass the incorrect image. For the twin result, we're gonna be using something from .twin called a sequence. So let's go to sequence result equals .twin.sequence. Here we're gonna append all the tunings that we want to do in this sequence. So let's go to result.append. The first thing we want to do is to take our, here we need a transform, transform. The first thing we want to do is to scale this up. So we're gonna do a result transform dot do scale. We want to scale it up to 1, so we go from 0 to 1 in 0.5 seconds. And we're actually going to do a dot set ease, just so it's not linearly and it looks a little bit better. So we're gonna use ease dot outback. Okay, so after we go back up to 1, we're gonna wait a second. So we're gonna do result dot append interval, so 1 second. Let's just put here what it does. So here, scale from 0 to 1. Wait for 1 second. And now we want to scale it back down. So let's go to result dot append, results transform dot do scale. So we want to go to 0 now. We want to do this a little bit faster, so 0.2. And we're going to do this linear. So scale back down to 0. And after all of this is finished, we want to call a method. So we want to actually load a new question. So we want to go here and say result.append callback, load new question. So load. Okay, this looks really good. Let's try this out now. Make sure you assign the references here. Press play. And yeah, we can see it working perfectly. Now, our answer is not being reset. So that's a really simple fix we can do there. Let's add an event here in our question manager. Let's call this public static on new question loaded. Sorry, static action, new question loaded. And every time we load a new question, we're just gonna trigger this event. And in our answers UI, we want to subscribe to that event. So void on enable, questions manager, new question loaded. We're gonna do reset values. And on disable, we're gonna unsubscribe from this event. So here, I'm gonna just create reset values. What we're gonna do here is just make sure that we fade them back out. So correct image do fade. We're gonna put them to 0 again, 0.2. And we're gonna do the same thing with the incorrect image. To fade, 0.2. Okay, let's see how this looks now. Now we have our question. We select one of the answers, and it fades back out. Then we can select a new one. Great. One last thing we need to do is we're able to select multiple things, and it kind of breaks. To be able to fix that, we're gonna go to the question manager, and we're gonna add a new event. So it's gonna call this public static action on answer provided. We're gonna actually call this as soon as we answer the question. Just trigger that event. And in the answer UI, we're gonna have a private boolean can be clicked, will be true. the beginning. We're just gonna subscribe to that event. So question manager dot one answer provided. Unsubscribe table. Here we're just gonna do void provided. Can be clicked equals false. We don't want any answer to be clicked. And here we just check if can be clicked. We do this. Lastly, we just want to reset the can be clicked to true when a new question loaded. Let's see how this works now. So if we press an incorrect one, we cannot press any other until the question is loaded again. Only one question is shown so far, but in the next episode, we're gonna learn how to implement the categories wheel and get a lot of more questions in our game. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so when I drop the second part of this tutorial, you see it right away. Thank you very much for joining, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. See you guys next time.